Hi, I'm Lauren, a certified teacher and literacy specialist, and today we'll be reading The Fairy Ring, a fairy tale about a girl who was drawn into the magical world of fairies. Written by me, Lauren Fornoles, and illustrated by Xiao. The Fairy Ring. There once was a mother and her child who lived in a deep, deep part of the country a long time ago, at the edge of a dark, dark wood. The little girl would go outside to play in the forest, picking herbs and leaves and braiding them into garlands for her long brown hair, and making them into pots of sweet-smelling tea for all of her playthings. The wind was her playmate and would tangle her hair into knots, which her mother would brush out every night. "You must be careful in the woods, my child," the mother said, "for there are wild things, and they say fairies about, that could bring you away from home. You must promise me to be careful." And the little girl would never know what to say, because she loved her mother and the woods too. One day, the little girl wandered farther than she had gone before to make a special brew. While she was picking the herbs, she felt her skin become all red and bumpy, and watched as it slowly spread across her arms and hands, then neck. She cried out in fear, "Oh, Mother, what has happened to me?" Her mother was so scared. She bundled her daughter up and traveled as fast as she could to the town doctor, but the malady was mysterious. "Fairy magic," the doctor said. So the mother, fearing she would lose her child, decided to keep her close, close and far, far away from the trees in the woods in which they lived. The girl missed the trees, which waved at her from her locked room. She wished it could open the window to let the wind in, but her mother had locked it for fear of fairies. One night, an especially gusty night, some wind danced in through the cracks in the window. The girl let it ring circles around her wrists and pull at her hair. She was happy to feel the air moving across her face again and tangling with it. It seemed the wind was happy to see her too. While the sliver of wind danced ribbons around her, she heard a small voice riding in on a tendril of air. The vapor seemed to be tinged with white and blue, and said, "Come, come, come with us and join the fairy ring. We will bathe in the moonlight, we will dance and sing." The little girl remembered her mother's warning, but she also could not resist the fairy's song. She walked to the door from her room and turned the handle. It opened easily before her. She walked out, her bare feet making not a sound. She tread past her mother's room. She was sleeping soundly. The daughter's heart squeezed tightly, but her feet kept moving toward the front door. This, too, opened easily before her, despite the padlocks. She was free. The girl's feet danced on the wet grass. The wind tangled her hair, and garlands of herbs and flowers fell into her lap as she shrunk down, 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 until she was the size of a toadstool. There, in a circle of small toadstools, she saw blue and white luminous shapes. It was the fairies! They were sitting quietly and drinking their moonlit tea, aglow with firefly spoons. There was one toadstool empty, with a teacup and spoon waiting for her. "Come, come, come with us and join the fairy ring. We will bathe in the moonlight, we will dance and sing," the creatures sang. The girl's feet started to dance, winding her closer and closer to the fairies, who flew up and joined her in a ring. They wove circles into the tall grass, where the fireflies lit their way. The moon cast shadows of flowers and water, of air and trees and wind, as if it was dancing along with them. The shadows melted into soft rain, and the scent of sweet night blooms filled the air. Happy and tired, the girl and the fairies came to rest on their toadstools, where they found their tea still hot. A blue and white luminous fairy told her she must not tell of her night in the forest, because once the mortal world mixes with the fairy, she will be forced to choose and either see her mother or the woods no more. The daughter's heart squeezed again. She loved her mother and the woods both. As she did not know what to say, she finished her moonlit tea until she felt herself grow taller and taller and taller, and yet so tall she almost stepped on the tiny toadstool that she had just been. She saw the rosy fingers of dawn in the distance, and then decided to hasten home. Walking in through the front door that locked behind her, and into the room where she found herself fast asleep. The next morning, her mother was gravely concerned over the state of her daughter's hair and night clothes, which seemed to be bathed in damp. She brushed out the tangles and gave her some warm, dry clothes. She almost would have thought her daughter had been out in the woods dancing, had she not known that she had securely locked her doors. She was glad to see her daughter smile, and the red coming back to her cheeks, though, so she didn't say a word. That night, after her mother thought her daughter was sound asleep in her bed, the girl got up and sat by the window, waiting and hoping. The moon rose high enough in the sky. The girl waited and waited. Had it been a dream? Just then, a blue and white tendril of vapor danced in through the window and said, "Come, come, come with us and join the fairy ring. We will bathe in the moonlight. We will dance and sing." The daughter rose and followed the light out to dance again in the forest. But this time, her mother had not yet fallen asleep. She had feared she had forgotten to lock the door, so she arose to check. Sure as rain, the padlock was there, but so too was the form of her daughter. Thinking her daughter was sleepwalking, the mother remained quiet so as not to startle her. She watched the door open easily before her, and as her daughter fairly skipped out into the moonlight. The mother was very frightened, but she kept her wits about her and followed as swiftly as she could, though keeping up with fairies is a difficult business. Her mother saw the toadstools with tea, heard the fairy song, and saw her daughter shrink down, 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 until she was smaller than a teacup, just the right size for the toadstool set out in the fairy ring. Her mother could not believe her eyes. But she also saw how happy her daughter was, how light as air, in ways she hadn't seen for a very long time. After the dance was over, the blue and white fairy said, "Winter is coming, and we must move our dances to the warmer climes until spring returns and we may dance in our glen once more. You will need to choose if you come with us as a fairy or remain as you are, a mortal. Tonight, when we come again, you must have your answer and be ready to leave with us." The girl's eyes filled with tears, for she did not want to choose. Either way, she would be missing the other. The fairies finished their tea, and the girl walked back to the house, led by the rosy fingers of the dawn. Her mother followed her at a quicker pace, lest she be locked out if her daughter were to return before her. Her thoughts raced as fast as her feet as the mother had heard the fairy's words. She would be so sad without her daughter, but she absolutely could not bear to see her daughter unhappy. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, when her mother brushed the tangles out of her hair and gave her warm, dry clothes to put on, the daughter noticed that the mother's clothes were damp and muddy. Neither said anything for a long time. As the tangles slowly wove their way out of her hair, the daughter started to speak. "Mother, I want to tell you something." But her mother interrupted. "No mind, my dear. I wanted to tell you that I hear you might be going away for the winter. It would be so good for you in the warmer clime. I will be here when you return." "But Mama!" "No buts about it. It is settled," her mother said. "And I will keep the house clean and ready for your return." The daughter turned and caught her mother in the warmest embrace. That night, her mother laid out a pair of warm mittens on her daughter's bed, mitten-sized for a girl, cocoon-sized for a fairy. The mother left the door unlocked, letting the wind and the woods and the moonlight in. The next morning, the mother planted a ring of toadstools in the front of the house, and every morning she brushed them off so they were ready and waiting. The end. I hope you enjoyed this time at the Storied Forest, and we can't wait to see you again next time. Goodbye.